you.
Thank you, Laska Hirlock, and thank you, Minister, for being in the Seanad this evening. I am truly delighted. It is quite a big day for me to be able to welcome the Criminal Justice Rehabilitative Periods Bill 2018 back to the Seanad. It is a real privilege and an honour to see the bill hopefully pass its report and final stages in the House tonight, especially in the likelihood that it will shortly be taken up by our colleagues in the Dáil. Much time has passed since our last debate on this bill in November 2019. It was a different Seanad that passed it through committee stage, and we have had fresh elections, a new government and a very different Oireachtas in that time. I think the fact that the bill has reached this point despite these changes speaks to its universality and power. I know that it is not every day that a private member's bill from an opposition senator makes it through the House. So I'd just like to start by thanking all that played a role in getting it to this crucial and life-changing legislation to these advanced stages. This will be my last time formally speaking on the bill, so I would be grateful for some latitude, Laska Hirlock, just so I can get everything mentioned and everyone mentioned. I'd firstly like to thank every single person with direct experience of dealing with historic convictions who have contacted me in recent years and since I was first elected in 2016 about the impact that it has had on their lives, their prospects and their opportunities. People have been so honest, so genuine and so generous in sharing a sometimes difficult part of their past with me, in the hope of seeing change in their own lived experiences in state policy and into law. Every provision of this bill is rooted in the sum total of all those impossibly diverse personal experiences. Experiences that made clear to me where our current laws were inadequate and where the changes need to be made. This bill is for all of you, and it has been forged from your life experiences and your desire to see change, from which I am grateful for. Minister, since I started working on this bill, not this bill specifically, but on spent convictions when I worked in addiction, and we didn't have spent convictions legislation at the time. And I suppose as someone who worked in addiction, trying to promote progress, trying to promote abstinence sometime, or recovery, or whatever that looks like, or encouraging people to engage in education or to engage in the workforce, and then realising pretty quick that we can support people to progress in their lives all we want in theory, but if the law and society doesn't actually allow them then take up those opportunities, then each and every stage of that work feels pointless sometimes to people, and they use up a lot of energy in trying to succeed and then being met with massive barriers when they try to get through that. You know, I always revert back to the many letters I've received throughout my life, first from my friends in prison, then from my family in prison, and now from people continuing to write to me as a legislator from prison, but also then people who have been out of prison a long time. And the common theme that always ran through them was, when I get out, I'm going to get a job. When I get out, I want to, never end up in this situation again. Constant aspirations, constant feeling for change, listening to the prison system when they're in there, that if they just do these key things, they can rehabilitate their lives and rebuild their lives, and they can be active members of society. And we tell them that, and then they leave prison, and they are literally perpetually punished, because it never ends there. It continues and it follows them and it follows them. When I first got involved in politics and, as a legislator, people heralded me as a role model or somebody to look up to, or somebody that could help other people find their way through the education system. But one of the most depressing things that I have found throughout that time was that I couldn't play that role for the people that I most cared about. Because when they asked me about education, when they asked me about studying social work, when they said they wanted to be a midwife, when they said what I really wanted to do when I grew up, I was too wild or young or I made mistakes, but now I want to do it. And I can't be that role model if the structures and society and employers and the education system doesn't allow people like me enter into that space. I was very lucky that my convictions were before I was 18. Had they not have been, I wouldn't be here today to be able to give that lived experience, to be able to work in the civil service, to be able to study social work or study medicine or even volunteer. Now to volunteer with your child's local football club, you've men and women contacting me saying how embarrassed they are to have to go back years into their history to tell their local club what might come up in their past. And it doesn't seem like a very forgiving society if we tell somebody that the judicial system will punish them, they serve their time, and then for us not to acknowledge that it doesn't end there and that it keeps continuing and it keeps continuing. And you know, we can't have progress if we keep pinning someone to their past. None of us are the sum total of what we've done in the past or what we experienced. And we also can't have recovery and integration without the space for people to be able to find their purpose. You know, if you look at the amount of people that have ended up in the prison system or with convictions, there's a huge class element to it as well. There's a huge low levels of educational attainment within the community. There's a huge level of poverty and consistent poverty. But we can't address poverty for those people who are most at risk at poverty if when they decide to enter the workforce to address the poverty, they're then excluded because of convictions in their past. And it's just a wheel that continues to repeat itself time and time again. And I suppose we all need purpose, and to feel useful, to feel valued and to be active members of society. Why would there be legislation and policy that refuses citizenship at that level? We are not the sum of our mistakes, and we are not the number of months we spent in prison, and we are not the trauma that we experienced, and we are not the conviction that comes back on that page. I'd like to thank Sebastian McAteer in my office for his advocacy and work on this bill, and I'd like to thank the Irish Penal Reform Trust and Director Fianna and all their staff and researchers for providing us with the benefit of their long history of policy expertise in this area, for launching the bill with my office and for their ongoing support in the years that followed. I'd like to thank my colleagues in the Civil Engagement Group, both current and former senators, for co-sponsoring the bill with me back in 2018 and for their ever-helpful assistance and advice in progressing the bill through the Seanad. I'm grateful to all my colleagues here in the House, in the previous Seanad and in its current form, for their near unanimous support and encouragement. And I'd like to thank the Office of the Parliamentary Legal Advisor, Seanad Éireann, BL, and her colleagues for drafting the legislation and for their work on subsequent amendments at committee stage. Finally, I'd like to thank various ministers, advisors and departmental staff that have worked on this bill with me over 3 years, including Minister Helen McEntee and former Minister Charlie Flanagan, for the support and the momentum that they have provided to get these changes into our law and get it moving. I'd also like to thank the members of the previous Joint Oireachtas Committee on Justice and Equality for engaging with stakeholders during an extremely worthwhile session in July 2019 on spent convictions reform more broadly, and for an excellent report and set of recommendations on how to strengthen the proposed changes to our law. I'm grateful to Minister McEntee for meeting with me to discuss the bill in October, to her department for holding public consultation in November, and for meeting me again earlier this year to discuss its results. I'm delighted that we are now assembled here this evening to pass the bill with the support of the Government and the use of Government debate time, for which I'm again grateful to the Minister and to the Leader for facilitating. It's the kind of cross-party, cross-chamber lawmaking that I'm always proud to be part of, and which really demonstrates the role of the Seanad as a source of needed and necessary legislative reform. These are the provisions of the bill, taken together and passed into law. I truly believe they could revolutionise criminal justice and penal policy in this area. Minister, I know that there has been considerable work done in your department since I introduced the bill, and particularly since the public consultation closed before Christmas. And I'm grateful to Minister McEntee and her officials for the presentation that I was given on the shape of those proposals that she intends to see passed into law. While I welcome their overall trust, and I'm concerned that certain amendments to the bill that government may intend to make will unfortunately limit and narrow the scope of what I've set out to achieve, though I certainly feel that there was a huge degree of unanimity from the various stakeholders in the consultation process, to which I of course contributed to myself. I would implore you, Minister, to consider any such amendments with caution and to ensure that the recommendations of these major stakeholders are reflected in the process as it progresses. The Oireachtas may not see fit to return to this area for many years to come, and the shape of what we agree over the coming months could have a long-lasting consequence. None of us want to return in another 5 years to amend a previously overly conservative act, as we are currently doing, to fix what we could have done and should have foreseen. This bill, in its current constitution, represents a real tangible reform in this area, and I would urge you and your officials to take a holistic approach in the Dáil and to ensure that the provisions of this legislation are fair, generous and really offer tangible support to former offenders to reintegrate into society after periods of offending as close to its current form as possible. And I'd like to thank you for your support, and I hope that I can continue to support my colleagues in the Dáil and your department as we see it progress through the Dáil. And I commend this bill to the House. Thank you.
Senator Ruane, can I warmly congratulate you from the chair? I think it's a great personal achievement. You have every reason to be very proud of it. It's important reforming legislation, and I warmly congratulate you and salute you for taking this initiative and doing it. And you're a great exemplar of what the Senate can achieve, and well done to you.
Thank you.